So many of you may be aware of, I was an investigator for the state of Tennessee for many, many years. I still do a little bit of that type work. Haven't done anything for Tennessee for a while, but I just did an investigation last year for another regulatory authority. I'm not going to say which one, but I have since shifted gears and really help appraisers now. So if you're in trouble, if you need a helping hand, that's a service I provide. And I really enjoy doing that. And sometimes we could be successful in getting you out of trouble altogether, or lessening the blow a little bit. And sometimes we have to say, we've got to chalk this up to a learning lesson, right? We made some mistakes, and we need to own up to those, accept responsibility, learn from our mistakes, and do better. My team recently, we've done well over 2,000 reviews, compliance reviews, field reviews, insurance reviews, reviews for litigation support purposes. And we've been seeing a lot of errors that we as appraisers are making that are somewhat consistent. Highest and best use used to be the number one. Appraisers were not doing a real good job putting their support and rationale for their highest and best use opinions in their report, which you're required to do. So be sure you're doing that. And a pre-printed form doesn't get you in compliance with USPAP. Keep in mind that forms don't comply with USPAP. Appraisers do. Or they don't, but they're supposed to. When we come back, I'm going to share with you the top three. There's about a dozen or so that's pretty consistent, and I'll give you an opportunity to maybe sit in one of my upcoming team meetings, and because that's what we're going to talk about in our next team meeting. But today I want to talk to you about the top three. The top three errors that we're finding that practicing appraisers continue to make. We're going to talk about it, and hopefully if you're in that category, this may help you to sharpen your tool a little bit and do a little bit better. Come on back and join the conversation. Hi, this is Bryan Reynolds. You're listening to the Appraisal Update Podcast, brought to you as always by the great folks at Appraiser eLearning. You need some education? Come on over to appraisereLearning.com and check us out. We've got tons of classes. We've got some conferences coming up. We hope to see you there. And we give away some free stuff too. So check out appraisereLearning.com. If you're watching this, you're watching it via our YouTube channel. If you haven't done so already, we ask that you go ahead and hit the subscribe button. It will keep you in the know. And of course, if you'd like to be a guest, or you know someone you think that would make a very good guest, reach out to us and let us know. We'd love to have them on the program. Okay, so I talked to you about common errors, is what I'll call it. Let's just break it down, and I'll just do 1, 2, 3, right? So I'm not going to do a countdown. I'll just go ahead and right now and share with you the number one. I don't know, maybe it'd be more suspenseful if I went backwards and gave you 3, 2, 1, but I'm not going to do it. These are all important. USPAP isn't a suggestion or a recommendation or a guideline. It's a requirement. And ladies and gentlemen, you either pass the test or you fail the test. When I do consulting work, I make that very clear, right? It's not negotiable. I mean, if your report is required to contain something from a minimum perspective, and it doesn't contain that, then you have violated uniform standards. It's just that simple. Now, we can argue, for example, let's go back to highest and best use a minute I spoke of on the intro. If you didn't put something in your report relative to your support and rationale for highest and best use, then you fail. You failed the USPAP test. It's just that simple. And you're really not going to have any kind of argument to defend yourself if you did an appraisal report, because you are required via your standard to put your support and rationale within the report. And you either did it or you didn't. Now, if we talk about you put something in there and someone doesn't think it's good enough or they didn't like it, it can be argued whether or not what you put in there was sufficient. Was it credible? Did it make sense? We can argue that. Well, I don't think it was good enough. Well, I do think it was good enough. Well, I don't. Well, I do. Well, let's fight about it and see who wins. Trier of fact will make a decision. But if you don't have something in there, then you failed. You failed to comply. It's just that simple. So here we go. Top three. Number one, still extraordinary assumption and hypothetical condition. Guys, I've done podcasts on this already. Hello, listen up. There's three things you have to do within the report if you use an extraordinary assumption and hypothetical condition. Appraisers are doing the first two. Well, they're doing at least one, but we can argue the other one. So they're doing the first two, but gosh, a lot of appraisers are failing to do that third thing. So let's look again real quick together. I'm going to show it to you. And if you're listening, you might want to jump back and watch this on YouTube. Again, subscribe to the channel. So, because I'm going to give you the reference in black and white right now. So if you look at the screen that I'm sharing, this is our current edition of Uniform Standards. And I highly encourage you to go to the definitions, and I'm not going to do that right now, but I encourage you to go to the definitions and read the definition of what an extraordinary assumption and what the definition of a hypothetical condition are. Then I would advise you to go to Standard 1 and talk about when you can use an extraordinary assumption and when you can use a hypothetical condition. If you've been listening to me, or if you've seen me or been in one of my classes, it's not uncommon for me to say that an appraiser can do almost anything. And I really, truly, genuinely believe that. You, as a practicing appraiser, can do almost anything. I didn't say you could do anything. So you could do almost anything. With extraordinary assumption and hypothetical condition and scope of work, it gives you so much flexibility. You can't do anything, but you can do almost anything. So review those definitions. Go to Standard 1 and see when it is permissible to use these tools that are readily available to you. But when you do use them, make sure you meet the minimum reporting requirements of USPAP. Forms don't comply with USPAP, you do, remember? So if you're using a pre-printed form or a template and it doesn't get you in compliance with USPAP, you better change it. So let me show you these three things again. I've showed this to you before, but guys, we're seeing this is number one. And for the most part in this podcast, I'm going to talk about an appraisal report. That's 22A, right? But on this issue, it doesn't matter if it's restricted or an appraisal report. They both say the same thing. So if you want restricted content, you go down to 22B. But 22A, Roman numeral 13, says clearly and conspicuously. I'm going to call that number one. That's the first thing you got to do. Number two, state all extraordinary assumptions and hypothetical conditions. It does not say you have to label it. You can. That's not a requirement to even say this is an extraordinary assumption. You can. We typically do. It says that you have to state it. I'm appraising this dirt here as if there was a house on the property. There's not a house on the property. It's dirt. But it's a proposed construction, plans and specs. I'm appraising it as if this house was there, which is like telling a lie, right? Because it's not there. And I'm basing it on these plans and specifications. And you can go ahead and say if you want to, therefore the appraisal is based on a hypothetical condition. You don't have to say those two words, but you can. And then look at the last item. It's line item 702 of USPAP, guys. And this is the one appraisers are failing to do. We see it over and over and over again. State that the use may have affected the assignment results. And I hate canned statements. I hate them, I hate them, I hate them. If it takes putting a canned statement in to get you compliant, put a flipping canned statement in. Put a statement somewhere in your report that says if the appraisers utilize an extraordinary assumption or hypothetical condition in this assignment, the use may have affected the assignment results. There it is, 1, 2, and 3. Again, you have to do all three of these, line item 700, 701, and 702. We constantly see reports where this has not been addressed at all. Please make sure that's not you. Because, guys, a reviewer has an obligation to review. And if you do an appraisal and you don't address those three things, then in order for the reviewer or investigator to do their job, they have to state that. I couldn't find it anywhere in the report. It says that the use of the extraordinary assumption or hypothetical condition may have affected the assignment results. We've got an issue with Standard Rule 22A, Roman numeral 13. It's just that simple. Let's move on. Number 2 was prior sales. Prior sales of the subject property. Prior sales of the comps. That's not a requirement in USPAP, but I know your forms and some of your clients require that. And even prior listings of the subject, nothing discussed, right? And there's actually not a requirement for prior listings in USPAP either, unless they're currently Standard Rule 1.5. You can look that up. But let's look at the reporting requirements for this, because this is what we're focusing on in this podcast. Okay? So if I go to Standard Rule 22A, I think it's Roman numeral number 10, subset 3. Okay. Summarizing the results of analyzing the subject sales and other transfers, agreements of sales, options and listings in accordance with Standard Rule 1-5. Guys, here's what an analysis or a summary of an analysis is not. The subject property sold last year for $150,000. What's that tell me? That just tells me it sold last year for $150,000. There's no analysis. There's no summarizing the results of the analysis. That's just a statement of fact. Yeah, we all know. You got little boxes there on the 1004 that already say that. You're required to analyze the prior sale of the subject, and then, in accordance with 22A Roman numeral 10.3, summarize the results of that analysis. Guys, maybe you start a sentence by saying, an analysis of the prior sale revealed, fill in the blank. Then you're answering the question that you're supposed to answer. And you're summarizing the results of that prior sale or transfer. What about a sales agreement? The subject property is currently under contract for $295,000. It was listed on June the 5th. It was reduced on July the 8th. Total time on the market was 120 days, whatever. Those are all just facts. Again, analyze that agreement and provide a summary of the results of that analysis. That's what you're required to do. The last one, number 3, we had a tie. There was a tie for third place. So third place was land use, and also putting the universe of listings and the universe of sales as opposed to comparable. So the current form is the 1004 form that most appraisers use for mortgage banking information, mortgage finance transactions. And, you know, the top of page 2 of the 1004 form, let me see if I can pull one up here real quick. It's asking how many listings are there? How many comparable sales are there? Let me see if I can pull one of these up here really, really quick, and we'll take a peek together. All right. So this is a form that many of you should be very familiar with. And if, again, you're listening and not watching, this is the 1004 form, or the Uniform Residential Appraisal Report form. And at the top of page 2, it says there are, fill in the blank comparable properties offered for sale in the subject neighborhood ranging from blank to blank. There are blank comparable sales in the subject's neighborhood within the past 12 months ranging from blank to blank. Now, if you truly are in an area where all the listings and all the sales in a particular neighborhood are in a competitive state for the same properties, then I guess you would fill that in accordingly. But how often does that happen? I mean, are the 2-bedroom homes competing for the same buyers as the 4-bedroom homes? And guys, I know we're not searching just on price. We're not searching price. I get it. But isn't that how the market looks at buying property? They say this meets my utility, this is my desires, this is the scarcity, and then purchasing power. So someone, if you fill in here that the range of prices were $90,000 to $2 million, and we've seen that, do you really think that someone that is buying a $90,000 home has the purchasing power to buy a $2 million home? Maybe they do, but I would think that's far and few between. And do you think that someone that's buying a $2 million home, that a $90,000 home, that they want to buy it meets their preference? And not just on price, but maybe it doesn't have as much square feet. Maybe it's less utility, number of bedrooms, number of baths. Maybe they're very, very similar, but the $2 million property has a $1.9 million view. And they're willing to pay for that, where the other one doesn't, right? There's all kinds of caveats, obviously. But when we see here that there are 720 comps in the last 12 months, ranging from 90,000 to 2 million, it makes you just scratch your head and wonder, are those all truly comparable? Or are those all the sales in a particular market area? Here's a good general rule of thumb. If you don't feel the sale would fit in one of these positions, comp 1, comp 2, comp 3, comp 4, comp 5, comp 6, whatever, then it doesn't belong up here in this equation. Nor does it belong on the 1004 MC form. 1004 MC form is not even required. Why are we still doing that? And then the other part was up here. We see often that it is 25 to 75% built up, but over here they have 100% one unit, or 90, right? We just see some inconsistencies within this section here. So that was kind of the tie. And then at least for Fannie Mae, keep in mind that this area here, 1 unit housing trends, is actually comparable properties, where the rest of it, and that drives me crazy because in bold capital letters, it says neighborhood right here. So shouldn't all this be relative to the neighborhood? Yes, say yes. But that's not what Fannie Mae says. Fannie says, and you go, their selling guide is very clear that this one little box here, we want it to be comparable properties. So if all the properties in the neighborhood compete for the same buyers, then fine, it'd be one and the same. But if your subject property has certain comparables within that neighborhood that interchange with your subject property, and then there's others in there too that are not comparable, then this one little box here, 1 unit housing trend, should just be comparable properties. And you find that in B4 of the Fannie Mae Selling Guide on their website. Okay. Guys, I know we have lots of rules and regulations and requirements and lenders overlay, and boy, I get a headache thinking about it all. By the way, there's some Fannie Mae stuff right there. So we'll be talking about time adjustments or market condition adjustments, whatever you want to call them. Stay in the loop, educate yourself. But guys, get very familiar with USPAP because it is your minimum requirement. It's not a suggestion. Before I let you go, I am accepting some new clients for consulting or coaching or mentorship, whatever you want to call it. If I can help you, feel free to reach out to us. You can jump over to my website, reynoldsandassociates.net. I'll be taking on a few new clients for this year where we do some one-on-one coaching and mentorship. I'm going to invite anybody that wants to attend my next team meeting. I've never done this and probably will regret it. But on January 28th at 1 o'clock, we have our next team meeting. And the topic is some conversation with my team. But then we're going to expand it and talk about what we just talked about on this podcast. We're going to not just stop at the top 3. I think we're going to talk about the top 12 common errors we see appraisers continue to make. And make sure, number one, that our team is sharpening our tools and we're not also making those similar mistakes that other appraisers and practitioners are. And then be on the watch out and make sure that we're following USPAP as well. So we invite you, if you're interested, you can jump over to reynoldsandassociates.net, and should be a tab there for team meeting. You can call me or reach out to my team. The office is 270-302-8866, and we'll let some folks join our next team meetings if you're interested in doing that. If you have a team, we encourage you to have regular meetings and talk about these things. And if you are a solo appraiser, we recommend you try to collaborate with folks and have that ability to bounce ideas and suggestions and techniques off of one another. If you're not a member of an association, think about joining an association. That's what it's all about. And certainly you can self-study and hone your skills, but we recommend you stay sharp because you're going to, number one, get a lot more done that way and be more effective. I just heard this story the other day, and I'll share it with you in closing. These two lumberjacks, they would get up every day and they would go chop wood. They both arrived at 8 in the morning and they worked till 5 p.m. One lumberjack, about midday, simply disappeared. He was gone for about an hour. I don't know, he went to lunch or what, right? The other lumberjack did not. He might take a quick water break or something, but he was not gone for an hour. But what was amazing was the lumberjack that disappeared for an hour always chopped more wood. Until one day they were having a conversation and the lumberjack said, "Hey, I have a question for you. We both come to work at 8 a.m. We both work till 5 p.m. You disappear for an hour during the day, yet you always seem to be able to chop more wood than I. Where do you go? What do you do during this hour that you disappear?" And the lumberjack said, "I go home and I sharpen my axe." Be sure you sharpen your axe. You'll be glad you did. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to the Appraisal Update Podcast brought to you by Appraiser eLearning. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're staying safe. Hope you're making some money. Until next time, I'm your host, Bryan Reynolds. Happy appraising.
The Appraisal Update Podcast is brought to you by Appraiser eLearning.